In this video, we're going to go over the AutoCAD features that you'll use to create the drawings from Module Chapter 0. The Chapter 0 drawings are located in a PDF file. They're within the module itself. You can download it to open it. The file is called AutoCAD handout.pdf, and this is what it looks like. I believe there's 14 drawings here. And you will do the majority of these. Okay, so what we're going to do first of all then is we're going to talk about panning and zooming. And I created a AutoCAD drawing, or part of a drawing here, that just has lines that intersect at the origin 0, 0, and has a couple boxes. So the first thing I want to talk about is the pan operation. In the pan operation, you simply press down the scroll button on your mouse, and the crosshairs will turn into a hand, and then you can move the screen to the left, the right, up and down, however you want. So this allows you to essentially center what you're doing. Zoom can be accomplished simply by scrolling the scroll wheel forward for zooming in and back for zooming out. And this is the reason why I mentioned in the very first video, if you don't have one, you want to get a 3-button mouse. Not using a mouse and not being able to scroll zoom does make life more difficult. There are buttons, however, to allow you to pan and zoom separately, and those are in this little toolbar here. The hand is the pan, so you can click on the hand, and then you'll see the hand, and then click on an area, hold your mouse button down, and move the screen to wherever you want it. For zoom, by the way, escape will generally get you out of any command and bring you back to the crosshairs, the normal point that you're at. The zoom is this button here, and it defaults to zoom extents. And the reason it defaults to zoom extents is because very often when you're doing a drawing, you'll zoom into a small area and make changes there, and then you want to zoom out to see the whole drawing again. Well, that's what zoom extents does. And what it does is it zooms to allow you to see everything that you put in your drawing space. So in this case, if I hit zoom extents, we see we have this extra box up here. Obviously I put this here intentionally, but it's actually one of the things that zoom extents lets you know. If you accidentally put something somewhere outside of your where you're actually working. Now to delete this, this is actually a 4-sided box where all the sides are connected together, so I can just click on it. When I click on it, you can see it gets highlighted. I can just hit delete. Now I'm going to zoom extents again. And at this point, I zoomed so that I only see these 2 boxes. So typically what you do is you would zoom, do your zoom extents, and then roll back the scroll bar, or excuse me, the scroll wheel by 1 or 2 clicks to get a view that works for what you're doing. You should always make sure you're using a view that allows you to see what you're doing. So you shouldn't be, let's say, trying to connect these 2 boxes with a line in some kind of view that looks like that. It's really not appropriate. Okay, so with that said, we've gone over pan and zoom. Let's go over drawing a line. So in drawing a line, you can give the absolute coordinates with respect to the origin. And in that sense, what you do is you basically type the x dimension, enter the x dimension, enter the y dimension. And to start a line, and I'm just going to move this, pan this down here. To start a line, all you have to do is click on one of the line buttons. We have the toolbar here, and we could also click on the line up here. So when you click on a line, the first thing you see is this text box. And it asks you to specify the first point. Well, the first point that you specify has to be with respect to your origin, with respect to our 0, 0 that we have down here. And I'm going to start a line right at 0, 0. So I'm just going to type 0, 0. And you can see we started a line, and I can move my mouse button and put the line wherever I want. However, you generally shouldn't be doing that. You should generally be generally always be typing a dimension. You shouldn't freehand drawings. It's essentially difficult, if not impossible, to, let's say, for me to, if we look at this line, it's now 24.302 at 9 degrees. Let's say I want it at 24 and 10 degrees. It's virtually impossible to do that. But you can do that by simply typing in coordinates. Now, the way coordinates work is we have absolute references and relative references. When you type into the boxes that you see here on your screen, you're typing a relative reference. So this next point, if I make this line, if I type 2, 2, this is going to type it, put the line 2 units to the X, or the horizontal, and 2 units to the vertical. So when I hit enter, the line is placed, and then you can see how we're set up to continue a line from this point. Now if I do this again, I'll type 2, 2. You see that again we move up, and now this point happens to be 4 at 4, 4. So when you type here, you're typing dimensions that are relative. You can also type absolute. So if we know this point is 4, 4, if I wanted to make a horizontal line from that point that was 4 units long, the final point would be at 8, 4. So I can actually, if I came down here and type 8, 4 in the text box, you'll see that I made a line of length 4, which is, again, at that same height, 8. So that's using a absolute coordinate. Generally, we don't often use absolute coordinates because we don't often specify a 0 on our drawing. It does turn out that in the very first set of drawings that we have, the first drawing does show a coordinate for this corner point right here. And this coordinate is 2, 2. What that's saying is that essentially this exists at 2, 2 in the drawing space, which means that somewhere down here 0, 0 has to exist. Another way of drawing lines is by using polar coordinates. So in polar coordinates, we specify the length of the line and the angle. And the angle we use, in order to specify that we're using an angle, we use the less than symbol. So as you can see here, the number, it essentially tells you exactly where you are. So here I'm at 7.3524 at an angle of 39 degrees. So let's say I wanted to put a line of length 5 at 45 degrees. All I need to do here is type 5, and I type 5 comma, and this happens often. You make mistakes. If you make a mistake, all you have to do is type U. Actually, you won't go there. U for undo. Oh, I guess it will. We can type U, and U is the undo command. It'll undo the very last step that you were doing. And I'll talk a little bit more about undos in a minute. So let's type, what did I say, 4 at 45 degrees. So I'm going to type 4 less than 45. And you see I drew a line at an angle of 45 degrees. So those are the three main ways to type addresses. Now, when you type absolute addresses, you can just type the dimensions in. When you type relative addresses, oftentimes, and off the top of my head, I do not recall exactly where AutoCAD requires this, but oftentimes it requires you to make sure that you're telling AutoCAD that it is a relative reference. In order to do that, we use the @ symbol. So if I come over here and I type @4, 0, what that's doing is that's saying you're going to make a relative line, length 4 in the X direction, 0 in the Y direction, from the last point that you're at. So when I hit the space, we get that line. Now, when you're just creating lines, as we are here, you don't need the @ symbol. So I could type 4, 0, and again, it'll do the same thing. It'll create a line of length 4. My recommendation is whenever you're typing a relative reference, and I will do this as I create drawings, always use the @ symbol. This way you get used to it, and when you come to the point where you don't, where you actually require the @ symbol, you won't end up making an error. So it's really not a big deal. We just type the @ symbol. So again, I can do, let's do 0, 4 this time. 0, 4. So now we're going to go 0 in the X direction and 4 in the Y direction. So now we move up by 4. So those are the 3 ways to enter lines. However, there are other ways, and in fact, generally these 3 methods we only use when we need them. You will find out by the time we get to chapter 1 how to draw lines without necessarily having to enter all of the dimensions. So there are easier ways to draw lines, especially when you're just doing horizontal or vertical lines. So let's take a quick look back here. We are at lines. Let's talk about how you select things. So you can do selections as follows. First of all, you can just click on something to select it. That will select it. The second is to use the select window. When you use a select window, and before I show you, let me point out that this is different than virtually every other Windows program. To create a select window, you simply press and release the right mouse button. That starts the window. Then you select the opposite corner. Now you have 2 options. If you go to the right, you'll get a blue box, and if you go to the left, you get a green box. So let's see what happens. When I do a right box, well, first of all, we'll select this. So here we selected this. And the reason I essentially finished that is that this unit, this device, is actually a box. So when I move this, I can move the whole box. When you draw lines, the lines themselves are not connected together. So if I click on a line, I select only the segment. I don't select this whole line that I built. So if I go over here and I hit my select button, and then I move to the right, what it selects is only a line, or in this case a line segment, that is completely within the box. If you remember, when I created this line, I created 2 sections. So we only selected the last section because that was the only section that was completely in the box. So if I do this, I'll get those 2 sections, and you can see they're highlighted here. If I right click and then do this, you'll only get the 1 section because we haven't included all of that horizontal section. So that's how the blue or right select window works. When we go to the left, as long as we make contact, and you can see how these highlight. That first horizontal section is highlighted, and as soon as I get to here, the next horizontal section is highlighted. So as long as we select a portion of something, when we go to the left, everything gets selected. So that's how we use select. Now, once you select, and I'm just going to draw a separate line here that we'll use. We'll select this line. If I click on the middle of the line, that starts a move operation. And this is simply moving the line. Now, when I move the line, and by the way, we generally don't move lines like this. Typically, the way we'll move a line is we will move it, and then we'll actually type dimensions. So we might type 0, 5, which would move it up 5 units. In that case, as I didn't do it, but I should have typed the at just to reinforce the relative that it's a relative move. So that will do a move. Now, while you're doing a move, if you simply type C, that move turns into a copy. And if you notice, to the right and just above the crosshair center, you can see that there's 2 small circles. That's telling you that you have a copy. So in this case, if I'm copying this, I may want to copy this and make a copy that's exactly 1 inch away. So I would type 1 inch down. So I would type at 0 because I don't want it to change in the x direction, and then I want it to move by 1 unit. So comma -1, and that moved it down by -1. And it still leaves me in the copy mode in case I want to place more of these. So that's how copy works. Along with select. With respect to move and copy, we can also do a stretch or a lengthen. And in that case, instead of clicking on the center, we click on one of the ends. These little boxes, these are called grips. And generally you see them at the center and the end of every device, as well as often some of the other features. So if we click here, you'll see them on the center of and end of every segment of this box, even though this box is only 1 unit. So as I click here, if I click on the end, you'll see stretch or lengthen appears. And as I move this, I'm currently doing a stretch. And a stretch allows you to change the angle. If I type the control key, the stretch changes to a lengthen. And now all I am able to do is extend the line. And although I say extend the line, I can also make the line shorter. So I could come back here, and now you see the line is shortened. So that's how the stretch and lengthen operate. Let's see, what haven't we covered? We covered a little bit of the undo as I made that mistake, but let's talk a little bit more about undo. So as you're creating a line, and let me just arbitrarily put a line in here with a couple of different segments. So let's say I wanted to make this segment vertical, or it doesn't matter, whatever. I put this line in and the line is incorrect. So I want to go back to the previous point. All I have to do is type U, enter, and it deletes that line segment. I can go back again and delete that line segment. Control Z also does the same thing. So Control Z will back you up by 1. And AutoCAD allows you to back up even beyond individual commands. So I could actually back this drawing up right to the point where we started today. So if I make a whole bunch of lines and then I decide, well, somehow I screwed it up and they're wrong, I need to delete the whole thing, I can come up here to the undo. And when I click this undo, the whole line disappears. Now, additionally, there are lots of different functions that you can select what you're undoing. Or excuse me, these are the list of the undo commands that you use. So we had those grip edits when we were doing that copy. Then we did a line, drop geometry. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but these are the whole list. This is the whole list of how far we can go back in our zooms. So just be careful though. If we come to this undo, you're going to undo your whole line. You really want to type Control Z or just type U, enter, or the character U, and then enter to do and undelete. Okay, so at this point we've covered everything from snap from. Snap from allows you to start a line or some other device, some other feature at an offset from a point somewhere else. So for instance, I want to start a line, and I can hover over this box, and you see these little squares pop up. These are called snap points. So we can snap from, start a line basically right at the corner and know that it's at the corner. But let's say I want to start a line in the middle of this box. Let's say it's up by 1 inch in the X and 1 inch in the Y from this corner. What I can do is I can click here. This is the snap from command. And I click on the snap from. Then I click on the corner. This is where I want to offset my line from. And at this point, you have to use relative dimensioning. So this is why I suggest you use it everywhere when you're typing. If I type at 1, 1, I can start the line at a known offset point from that box. Okay, so that completes this video. The next video will show you how to do the actual drawings for IC1.